Instrument flying can be a very intimidating task to undertake. It is a part of aviation that always keeps us pilots on our toes. As a simulation pilot, you may be having a great amount of trouble not only with instrument flying, but instrument flying in a complex platform like the 747. Believe it or not, it doesn't have to be hard. By staying ahead of the aircraft at all times, and while performing the correct checks and procedures, you'll see that approaches can be done with ease, all while achieving the maximum amount of safety. At Angle of Attack, we teach several methods of doing approaches that are real, simple, and safe. First, and as you will see in a few minutes, is the CDAP or Constant Descent Approach Procedure. The CDAP is an extremely effective set of guidelines that will allow you, the pilot, to perform non-precision approaches with ease. More on this in a few moments. Second, you'll learn to do traditional ILS and autoland procedures, these being precision approaches. You can expect to learn these whether you've done an ILS before or not, all with an emphasis on how it is done on this flight deck. The Cat 1 ILS will be one of the more challenging approaches in this course, as it will be hand-flown. Back to the CDAP. Because CDAP is an unfamiliar term for most, unless you are the proud owner of the 767 DVD we produced, you'll now go over what makes up a CDAP. I'm going to make your day and now give you some math to do. It's nothing too complex. Each CDAP approach has 3 computations you must make. They are simple and only take a couple moments to do, but over time you'll be able to do them in your head in a split second, and then get them down on paper so they're handy. Number 1 of the 3 is Computed Touchdown Zone Elevation. On your approach chart, you will find the touchdown zone elevation for your landing runway. To figure this for the CDAP, simply round the elevation up to the next highest 100. For example, an altitude of 1 foot would be rounded up to 100 feet. An altitude of 98 feet would also be rounded up to 100. It's simple. Number 2 of the 3 is the Computed Decision Altitude. Each approach you perform will have an MDA, minimum descent altitude. This altitude is computed for the CDAP by adding 50 feet. Say your MDA is 1,320. The computed decision altitude for the CDAP would then be 1370. Make sure you are using the proper category and approach MDA for your computation. Number 3, and the last, is computed descent rate. This one is a little more involved. Although an 800-foot descent works the majority of the time, it is still necessary to run this computation through your head. Start out with your target airspeed. Say this airspeed is 140 knots. Now divide this number by 2. In this case, that is 70. Now times that number by 10, or simply just add a 0 onto the end. Right here we are looking at a descent rate of 700 feet, which would be the lower limit of what the 747 would fly for a glide slope of 3 degrees. Although your computed descent rate will not be the perfect descent rate, it is what you will start out with. Minor adjustments will then be made throughout the approach. During these adjustments, you may only adjust 300 feet in either direction and no more than 1,000 feet per minute below 1,000 AGL. Only increments of 100 feet can be used for the computed descent rate and adjustments during the descent. So remember, airspeed divided by 2 times 10. Those are the big 3 you'll need to know. That's all great, but where do they come into action? Well, your everyday CDAP may look something like this. Approaching the pattern, or maybe already in the pattern, you will perform the airbag checklist. This checklist is all-encompassing for the approach setup and will get everything ready and up to speed for the arrival. As the approach progresses, speed is reduced and flaps are selected. The appropriate navigation steps are made to get us to the start of the CDAP. Up to the start of the CDAP, everything is normal and not really of any difference from other approaches. The start of the CDAP begins 3 miles prior to the final approach fix. At this stage, the aircraft should be geared down at final flaps and slowing down to target airspeed. The fun begins 0.3 nautical miles from the final approach fix. With the correct computed touchdown zone elevation in the MCP altitude window, the aircraft will be nosed over to the computed descent rate via the vertical speed wheel. Now descending toward the runway, you are watching out for the computed decision altitude. This will be exactly what it says. It is where you will make the decision to continue the approach or do a missed approach based on whether the runway environment comes in sight or not. From there on out, it is the normal short final, flare, rollout, and runway vacate. This is obviously a very basic overview of what it is like. Without delay, let's see one in action.